Was he imagining things? Could all this have anything to do with the Potters? If it did, if it got out that they were related to a pair of, well, he didn't think he could bear it. The Dursleys got into bed. Mrs. Dursley fell asleep quickly, but Mr. Dursley lay awake, turning it all over in his mind. His last comforting thought before he fell asleep was that even if the Potters were involved, there was no reason for them to come near him and Mrs. Dursley. The Potters knew very well what he and Petunia thought about them and their kind. He couldn't see how he and Petunia could get mixed up in anything that might be going on. He yawned and turned over. It couldn't affect them. How very wrong he was. Mr. Dursley might have been drifting into an uneasy sleep, but the cat on the wall outside was showing no sign of sleepiness. It was sitting as still as a statue, its eyes fixed unblinkingly on the far corner of Private Drive. It didn't so much as quiver when a car door slammed on the next street, nor when two owls swooped overhead. In fact, it was nearly midnight before the cat moved at all. A man appeared on the corner, and Cat had been watching. Appeared so suddenly and silently, you would have thought he would just popped out of the ground. The cat's tail twitched and the eyes narrowed. Nothing like this man had ever have been seen on Private Drive. He was tall, thin, and very old, judging by the silver of his hair and beard, which were both long enough to tuck in his belt. He was wearing long robes, a purple cloak that swept the ground, and high-heeled buckled boots. His blue eyes were light, bright, and sparkling behind half-moon spectacles, and his nose was very long and crooked, as though it had been broken at least twice. This man's name was Albus Dumbledore. Albus Dumbledore didn't seem to realize that he had just arrived in a street where everything from his name to his boots was unwelcome. He was remaining in his cloak, looking for something, but he did seem to realize he was being watched, because he looked up suddenly at the cat. It was still strange and scaring him from the other end of the street. For some reason, the sight of the cat seemed to amuse him. He chuckled and muttered, "I should have known." He found what he was looking for in his inside pocket. It seemed to be a silver cigarette lighter. He flicked it open, held it up in the air, and clicked it. The nearest street lamp went out with a little pop. He clicked it again. The next lamp flickered into darkness. 12 times he clicked the put outer until the only lights left on the whole street were two tiny pinpricks in the distance, which were the eyes of the cat watching him. If anyone looked out of their window now, even beady-eyed Mrs. Dursley, they wouldn't be able to see anything that was happening down on the pavement. Dumbledore slipped the put outer back inside its clock and settled down the street towards number 4, where he sat down on the wall next to the cat. He didn't look at it, but after a moment he took to it. "Fancy seeing you here, Professor McGonagall." He turned to smile at the tabby, but it had gone. Instead, he was smiling at a rather severe looking woman who was wearing square glasses, exactly the shape of the markings the cat had around its eyes. She too was wearing a cloak, an emerald one. Her black hair was drawn into a tight bun. She looked distinctly ruffled. "How did you know it was me?" she asked. "My dear professor, I have seen a cat seen so stiffly. Never, never. You would be stiff if you would be sitting on a wall of the day. You'll be stiff if you would be sitting on the brick wall all day," said Professor McGonagall. "All day? When you could have been celebrating. I must have passed a dozen feasts and parties on my way here." Professor McGonagall sniffed angrily. "Oh yes, everyone is celebrating all right," she said impatiently. "You would think they would be a bit more careful, but no, even the muggles have noticed something going on. It was on the news." She jerked her and back at the Dursleys' dark living room window. "I heard it. Flocks of owls, shooting stars. Well, they are not completely stupid. They were bound to notice something. Shooting stars down in Kent. I'll bet that was Deadliest Diggle. He never had much sense." "You can't blame them," said Dumbledore. "We have had precious little to celebrate for 11 years. "I know that," said Professor McGonagall irritably. "But that's no reason to lose our heads. People are being downright careless out on the street in broad daylight, not even dressed in muggle clothes, swapping rumors." She threw a sharp sideways glance at Dumbledore, here, as though hoping he was going to tell her something, but he didn't. So she went on. "A fine thing it would be if, on the very day, who seems no had to disappear, at least the muggles found out about us all. I suppose we really have gone, Dumbledore?" "It certainly seems so. But Dumbledore, you have much to be thankful for. Would you care for a lemon drop?" "A what?" "Lemon drop? The kind of muggle sweet I'm rather fond of." "No, thank you," said Professor McGonagall, as though she didn't think this was the time or this was the moment for lemon drops. "As I say, even if you need my dear Professor, surely a sensitive person like yourself can call him by his name. All this, nonsense. For 11 years I have been trying to persuade people to call him by his proper name. Voldemort." Professor McGonagall flinched, but Dumbledore, who was unstinking to lemon drops, seemed not to notice. "It all gets so confusing. If you keep trying, you keep saying, I have never seen any person to be frightened of saying Voldemort's name." "I know. You haven't," said Professor McGonagall, sounding half exasperated, half admiring. "But you're different. Everyone knows you are the only one, Oh, all right, Voldemort was frightened of." "You flattered me," said Dumbledore calmly. "Voldemort had powers I'll never have. Only because you are too, noble to use them. It's lucky, it's dark. I haven't blushed as much since Madame Pomfrey told me she liked my earmuffs.